Was the robot revolution a good start to Doctor Who Season 2? Okay, so obviously the Robot Revolution, the first episode of Doctor Who Season 2, has finally aired, and obviously I've already done my first impressions video on this episode, so if you've seen that, you already know some of my thoughts on this episode, but I'm finally getting around to reviewing it. Hopefully the reviews for the future episodes of this season shouldn't take as long as this one, and there'll probably not really be any first impressions videos for the future ones because my reviews should come out sooner than this one, but I've been very busy this week, so I did a quick first impressions instead, and I'm doing my review just before the next episode of Lux comes out. But this episode was my least anticipated episode of this season, and as a season opener I was mostly just hoping it would be better than Space Babies last season. So what did I think of this episode, and did it exceed my expectations? Before we get into that review, I just want to mention, in celebration of Doctor Who Season 2 airing, I currently have a discount on my Patreon for 50% off your first month of any paid tier on my Patreon page when you use code Season2. So I'll make sure to have the Patreon linked in the description down below, but that's just a little discount I'm running in celebration of Doctor Who Season 2. And without further ado, let's get back into the review. So, the Robot Revolution opens with a cold open that for me personally seemed a little bit rushed and a bit choppy, but this is probably the only pacing issue I have with the episode, which I'll discuss more later on in this video. Also, seeing the Doctor just wandering around without interacting with Belinda felt a little bit weird, but it does make sense considering he needs to meet her later on in the episode instead of in this cold open when she's working at the hospital. But something about it did just feel a little bit weird to me, even though it makes sense for the story as a whole. I've also seen a lot of people point out that the Doctor quite likely killed a lot of people in the hospital by shutting off their power, but to be fair, as far as I know, most hospitals do have backup generators just in case a power cut does happen, so it's probably fine, but that is a funny moment in the episode that was a little bit weird. Okay, so also as part of the cold open, after this hospital sequence, we obviously get the robots coming in to kidnap Belinda Chandra, with one of the robots killing a cat, which was a bit of a weird moment, and it's kind of weird that I had such a negative reaction to this moment in this episode, considering a lot of people die in this episode. But all I can think is just imagine if this was a dog instead of a cat. For some reason I just don't think they would do that, but at least they don't actually show the cat before it's killed, because that would maybe have been a step too far. But I did think that was a bit of a weird moment, but like I say, a lot of people die in this episode and no one's really bothered about that, besides one particular character which I'll get into later on. We obviously have Mrs. Flood as well in this cold open, who's now Belinda's neighbour, which is an interesting development. I'm still not too invested in this mystery, especially after the revelations at the end of season 1, but I did love her lines and delivery in this particular moment, and how clearly none of this is phasing her. Like, she doesn't care that this robot's coming down and kidnapping Belinda. And I do think the "you ain't seen me" line is probably the best fourth wall break Mrs. Flood has had so far, or at least my favourite, but let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. Okay, and as for the main story, when we're on the planet Miss Belinda Chandra, we have the cool moment with every ninth word not being heard by the robots, which I thought was a very cool moment when it first happens, when we're first introduced to the Doctor, or the Doctor's introducing himself to Belinda as the historian of this planet. Although I don't feel like we needed the supercut flashback immediately after we'd just seen the ninth word thing explained, as it was fairly obvious which words the Doctor was stressing and what he was trying to get across to Belinda. But I guess that's maybe there just for the younger people watching in the audience, so it was a little bit annoying, but I guess if it helps like the kids watching it understand what's going on a bit better, then it's fair enough. But this every ninth word thing, while it is cool in this initial scene where it first happens, it does seem very quickly dropped for most of the episode, and it's not really focused on or utilized again until it's brought back at the end of the episode, which I'll get onto later. Like, if somebody did a supercut of every ninth word in this episode, the robots must have missed a lot of important words after this point, because no one's utilizing that trick or anything like that, so a lot of the sentences that are being said to the robots must make not that much sense to them, or maybe some important words are left out of some of those sentences if someone went back and kind of figured out what words were missing. So it is kind of weird that it's kind of dropped until it comes back later on in the episode. Obviously we have Sasha 55 in this episode as well. First of all, a lot of people were saying that she's badly acted, which I personally don't agree with. She does seem a little bit off when she's first welcoming Belinda to the planet, but that is because she's putting on a facade, so I don't personally think this character's portrayal was all that bad, but we also don't see much of it anyway, so there wasn't much opportunity for the actor to kind of sink their teeth into or anything like that, but I personally don't think the acting was that bad. Obviously we do then have the moment where Sasha 55 is killed by the robots, which was very obviously telegraphed to the audience that she was about to die when the Doctor was promising her a trip through the stars after they've defeated the robots. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody saw that coming when that moment happened, and while it makes sense for the Doctor to have such a strong reaction to Sasha's death, because obviously he's known her for 6 months at this point, she's basically been his companion since he landed on this planet, it does feel weird for us as an audience that it's given that much attention, considering we've only known her for about a minute or two. And obviously people already have an issue with the Doctor crying a lot in this era. I don't personally have an issue with him crying, but it does make me worry that more emotional moments won't be as impactful when they happen later on in the season because of it. And like I said, with this moment in particular, although it does make sense because of the Doctor's connection to Sasha 55, we've not really had that connection with her at all because we've known her for about a minute or two at this point in the episode, so it doesn't really work as an audience, even if it does kind of make sense in the context of the story. But it doesn't bug me that much, and at least it's not brought up too much, or at least the crying aspect kind of happens once, and then, you know, it's brought up again for Manny to be mad at Belinda about and stuff like that, which I think is fair enough. But my main thing is I'm just really hoping this doesn't affect any more impactful emotional moments later on in the season. Obviously, the big part of this particular episode and the start of this season is our introduction to Belinda Chandra, who I really like in this episode. We get a moment quite early on after they've escaped the robots and they're in the Undercity, where the Doctor starts trying to explain the stuff with the star certificate to her, but Belinda's more focused on making sure that she's using her nursing skills to help people that are injured in this kind of makeshift hospital area. And I think that's a good way to show what her character is like and what her priorities are, and that she really cares for other people and is a selfless person. And I think she has some other great moments in this episode, such as telling the Doctor that she can stand up for herself and giving herself up to the robots to save everybody else. That does have something to do with the Polish robot, which I couldn't go through this review without talking about. Not only is the Polish robot a fun and cute robot, but it also very cleverly sets up a few things in this episode, such as the Doctor shutting down the robot so the robots can't track them down and follow them, for Belinda to then turn the robot back on to give herself up to the robots, which for me personally I thought that's very clear that that's what she was doing, but I've seen a few other people with like reaction videos, and I think also my girlfriend kind of was wondering why Belinda was doing that, why she was turning the robot back on. But for me personally, it was pretty obvious that she was trying to give herself up to the robots to save everybody else. And then obviously the robot comes back again in the AI generator room to help the Doctor give the star certificate to Belinda. So like I said, not only was this robot a fun, cute addition for the story, but it does really help progress the plot in quite a natural way as well, and allow for a few things to happen in the episode in quite a natural way. As for the ending of this episode, the twist of Alan being the AI generator is a bit predictable, but it does make sense for the episode and makes good use of time travel in a very interesting way for this episode, which I appreciated. Maybe it was just predictable for me because I might have seen somebody speculating that this was going to happen before the episode aired, but I do still feel like it was pretty obvious that that's where this story was going to go. But let me know if you disagree in the comments down below. But I don't think this moment needed the whole AI generator being Al generator thing, because it kind of works without that anyway, and it also doesn't really make any sense because what is an AL generator? RTD seems to have this thing of like anagrams or similar things to anagrams, like wordplay and stuff like that in this season, like the Sutek and Susan triad technology thing from last season. And in this case, I don't think it really makes sense and wasn't really needed for the episode, because like I said, what is an AL generator? Once that's revealed, that's kind of what that means, and then it doesn't really make sense. And it would have maybe made more sense if the big robot overlord thing was just called AI or the AI, because then it could have been revealed to just be called Al or the Al, which is still a bit weird but works better than Al generator. And also, wouldn't the robots know that it's Al and not AI? So why are they still calling it the AI generator? It's a little bit weird, but I guess it's not like a big problem with the episode. It's not a huge issue I have. I just thought it was a little bit weird. Also, I've seen some people in some reviews and discussions about this episode talking about how this character, this machine being called the AI generator, makes the commentary of AI not very subtle and very heavy-handed, to which I would say, what commentary? There isn't any commentary on AI in this episode besides the big machine being called the AI generator. So they probably shouldn't have really called it that, because it does kind of make you think that they're going to do some commentary on AI, and then they just don't. Like, commentary on AI can't be heavy-handed if they don't do any commentary on it. So I don't understand why I've seen people saying that this is very heavy-handed commentary on AI when there isn't any commentary on AI in this episode at all, at least as far as I can tell. Also, one of my big issues with this episode, and particularly the ending of this episode, is Alan's demise, because it kind of has some sort of mixed messages of what it's trying to get across and convey in this episode. Obviously, we're led to believe and shown that Alan is a bad person, which he is. He's not a great guy. He is basically an incel, like they say, and he's a very controlling person and was a controlling boyfriend to Belinda. So we're obviously not supposed to like him. But then they bring back the every ninth word thing from the start of the episode to try and make him a more sympathetic character. So the episode's kind of giving mixed messages of whether or not we're supposed to like this guy or hate this this guy, which makes it especially weird when he dies or gets turned back into a sperm and an egg and gets swept up by the polish robot, with the Doctor and Belinda kind of laughing about it and celebrating, because I guess that would kind of make sense if we're only shown that he's a bad guy and led to believe that he's a bad guy. It would still maybe feel a bit out of character for the Doctor to be celebrating that, but it would kind of make sense. But then they also try and make him a little bit sympathetic as well, so it's kind of very mixed messages, I keep saying, I guess, from the episode, to kind of show both aspects and kind of make him sympathetic, but also we're not supposed to be empathizing with him at all. It's very weird. Like I said, I think the only pacing issue I have with this episode is the cold open, which seems a little bit rushed and choppy, because I actually like how quickly the main story in this episode wraps up, because the plot isn't really the main point of this episode, and the main story wrapping up this quickly allows us to have more of this moment between the Doctor and Belinda in the TARDIS at the end of the episode, which was a scene that I really liked, and I like that we kind of slow it down a little bit for the end, and it doesn't just end so abruptly like many of the episodes last season. And although I don't like how they're drawing attention to Belinda looking like Monday Flynn from last season, because I really don't think it needs to be a mystery, I do like that it allows for Belinda to have this great moment where she puts the Doctor in his place, with him scanning her DNA without her consent, and him just assuming she will travel with him and solve this mystery with him, which she clearly doesn't want to do. So I did like that moment between the pair, and it just gives us a good sense of Belinda's character and the new dynamic between this Doctor and companion pairing, and that there's obviously going to be a lot more conflict between them than there was with the Doctor and Ruby last season, which I really appreciate, and I'm excited to see if that sticks around for the rest of the season and they don't just immediately become best friends next episode. And obviously at the end of this episode we have a cliffhanger with the Doctor not being able to get Belinda home, which is a great mystery and a great running through line for the season. And that shot that this episode ends on is also a great cliffhanger and a very impactful moment that really gets you excited for the finale of this season and what's going on, which is something I also remember seeing in a lot of the promotional material. I think it was like the TV spots and stuff like that, and I didn't actually expect this to be in the episode itself, so it was cool to see, and like I said, it's a very impactful cliffhanger for the season as a whole. So like I said at the start of this video, this was probably my least anticipated episode for this season, and I was mostly just hoping it would be a better season opener than Space Babies last year, and luckily it definitely was for me, personally at least. While I didn't hate Space Babies last year, I wasn't a big fan of it and didn't think it was the best or strongest season opener, but I think this episode was a lot stronger than that and worked a lot better as a season opener and potentially a jumping on point for new viewers. It also had some great VFX and production design, besides some dodgy green screen near the end when they're leaving the city, and apparently the first TARDIS materialization in this episode looks a bit off, but I personally didn't see it. I kind of could tell when I was rewatching it, but it personally didn't stick out to me that much. So besides those couple of dodgy moments, I think this episode looked great, and like I said, it was a pretty strong season opener in terms of the writing as well. So if this is going to be the worst episode of the season, then I'm excited for what's to come, assuming that the finale doesn't fall flat on its arse again like it did last year. But let me know what you think about this episode in the comments down below. And before this video ends, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to my patrons Tom Baker, Lewis, Andy Collin, flippredd, theunquest, James Box, Oliver Underwood, the Beast Boss, and LukeN.B.N. These are all free members who, along with getting their names read out here, also get behind the scenes updates such as thumbnail previews and a free monthly newsletter. To get your name read out at the start of videos, as well as getting early access to videos and exclusive content, you can join as a paid member of the Patreon. And like I mentioned earlier on in this video, in celebration of Doctor Who Season 2, I'm currently running a discount when you use code SEASON2 to get 50% off your first month on any tier. So with all that being said, subscribe and thanks for watching.